Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me once again, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What is going on? So today's episode, we're going to be talking about kind of a lot of Cameron stuff. On my side of things, I've really just been continuing to play Mass Effect Legendary Edition, so I'll talk a little bit about that. But Cameron has some thoughts on the Overwatch 2 PvP reveals that we had this last week, as well as the passing of Kentaro Miura, author of Berserk. And Cameron went and saw Demon Slayer Mugen Train, so he will be talking about that as well. Before we dive into any of that, though, I want to give a little bit of housekeeping. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, subscribe, and ring the notification bell on YouTube, all that fun stuff. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, just like our wonderful Patreon producers do. Also, just kind of announcement elsewhere on the site/channel. We announced this last weekend that we're going to be doing a Summer of Star Wars over on that D Plus show. So come check that out starting, I believe, June 4th. Happy anniversary to my parents. We're going to be starting with episode 4 and then going through like the Skywalker saga kind of in release order. So 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9. And then we're going to wrap up come like August or whatever with definitely Rogue One and Solo. And probably just because Logan doesn't want to do it at this point, we're probably going to do the Clone Wars movie. And then maybe we're going to throw in Empire of Dreams, the documentary on the original trilogy as well. So come check that out over on that D Plus show. It's going to be a fun few months just kind of doing a whole bunch of Star Wars stuff over there. So yeah, come keep an eye out on that. With all that out of the way, I will throw it over to you, Cameron. Tell me about what's going on in Overwatch 2 PvP. I saw like a handful of people tweeting about this, and I was like, there must be some kind of Overwatch like stream going on or something, like some kind of news information, because I saw you tweeting about it. I saw a couple other people like tied to Blizzard and Overwatch stuff. So yeah, tell us what's going on with Overwatch 2 PvP.
So Overwatch 2 has been in development since I think they said they started about a year to year and a half after Overwatch 1 came out back in 2016. So sometime in 2017, they started working on Overwatch 2. Since then, they have been doing a lot of things to change things up, kind of make it a true sequel. They introduced back in, I want to say 2019, they announced that there would be a PvE mode in Overwatch 2.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really interesting is that there's been rumors for a little while, for like the last year, that they might be moving towards a 5v5 for Overwatch 2. Now, a lot of people, myself included, push that off. We're like, that doesn't make any sense. It's just it would, like, the logistical changes that would have to be made are enormous. And then they announced it this past week that Overwatch 2 would be a 5v5 meta going forward. What that means is that there would be a single tank role, 2 DPS, and 2 healers, versus the standard 2-2-2. Now,
So
a lot of people.
If I can interject, why is the default that the tank would be sacrificed? Why wouldn't you run 2 tanks, 1 DPS, or 2 tanks, 2 DPS, and 1 healer?
So something that's changed since I think you played it back in 2018. Trevor,
regardless of when I played it, was like I was never into it enough to follow any of that stuff.
Sure. I was actually referring to like the one time.
Now? Okay.
So when you queue up for a role, you either have to choose between tank, DPS, and healer. And this was done because there was this meta a while ago called GOATs, which is named after the European team made up of like former legendary players who called their team GOATs, greatest of all time. And the meta around it was essentially 3 tanks and 3 healers, no DPS. And GOATs was so dominant that for about 2 to 2.5 years, nothing really changed in that meta. It just like, that was it. Probably, actually, I'm sorry, for a year and a half, not 2.5 years.
So is this
So essentially,
just to,
yeah.
to try and wrap my head around this? Is this like in competitive only, or in like non-competitive playlists? Like you're also locked to these kind of class
Oh
types?
no. It depends on which like non-competitive playlist.
Okay.
Because there's like other ones where it's like traditional, like old school Overwatch 6v6, so you can have as many people who like. There's old Overwatch playlist, which is anybody can be any hero they want. You don't have to like lock people out, so you can have a team of 6 tracers if you want.
Yeah.
There's that level of like playlist. So like the playlists in non-competitive and non quick play are still like, depending on what kind they are, it can be like
It's do whatever.
two,
It's still the Wild
or
West.
whatever you
Go
want.
nuts. Okay.
Yeah.
So
There's still plenty of different ones.
This is Blizzard themselves, when they're redefining it as 5v5, they're redefining it and saying you're only going to have one tank for this, you're going to have 2 DPS and 2 healers. So I guess
that is correct.
So my question then is, why is that the decision that's being made as opposed to one of those others, or leaving it open-ended of, you still have to have 2, 2, and 1, but it could be whatever. Why are they going with let's pull a tank? Or is that why you don't know what's going on and why you're so confused by this?
No, I mean they explain it pretty straightforwardly. Whenever you've had to adjust tanks, you have to adjust them with every other tank in mind. So whenever there's been a big rework or a big change for a tank, or a significant change for a tank, the question is, because what duo of tanks you have changes the kind of tempo and way that you play. Because if you have 2 slow tanks, the way you approach a point is going to be slower, more methodical, with a lot more thought into your positioning and how things are going. If you are like 2 faster tanks or a fast and slow tank, like these things change up depending on that. Now, what they're doing is, they're in Overwatch 2, they wanted to make tank play more aggressive rather than as passive as it's been since launch. Overwatch 2 is about empowering tanks to be more aggressive. And instead of being a traditional tank, you'd probably consider them more of a brawler class now. So they don't. Their job necessarily isn't just to take damage for the other players, and tank those hits and be up at the front. It's to really be more aggressive and push in more, because you're a brawler, and that's the point. Because now that you don't have an off tank, there's no one to mitigate damage on a tank as well as peel off other classes. And so this is what I want. I tweeted this out a couple of times, but what this does is this changes the fundamental approach to how Overwatch is played. Prior to this, Overwatch was about 6 players working together to complete an objective. And that was based upon their roles, their skills, and the abilities of the heroes they chose. That's out the window now. Going to a 5v5 is like, a lot of people have a lot of speculation about, is this going to mean that we're going to see more individualism individual play be more important than team play, which was kind of like the epitome of 6v6 was, no one person can really, like, you can have a clutch moment, but those clutch moments are moments. You as a player are not going to determine the entirety of the match. Because in 6v6 means, oh, you're the standout player, cool. The nail that is above the rest is the one that gets the hammer first. So focus fire on that one guy who's doing really well and shut him down. That is a very typical strategy for 6v6. It is much less available. And it does not help that the people that they had playing the 5v5 in the stream, I don't want to be mean, because I don't know who they are.
Were they bad?
Yeah, they were bad. They were really bad. But
so
here's the thing, I don't know if
they were the common Overwatch player.
That's the thing, I don't know though. Like, because here's a big problem with it, and this is one of my approaches was 5v5 means either one of 2 things. One, every role has to be able to peel. Now, what peeling means when somebody is being focus fired, you do something to mitigate the damage being done to them. Now, as a tank, that usually means you use one of your tanking abilities to either take the damage or prevent damage from being inflicted to you. So D.Va eating the like projectiles and bullets and stuff, to Reinhardt putting up a shield, to like anything like that a tank does to peel, usually is to mitigate damage. For a DPS player, to peel means to essentially like kill somebody or take focus off of the person being focused on, and healing means healing the person who's being focus fired on, peeling for them. So you have all these things that you can do to peel. However, consistently, the best peeling is done by the off tank. The off tank who is either on the front lines with the tank, helping mitigate peeling damage for them there. DPS is being focus fired on. Off tank's job is to head over there and take care of that. Do the same thing there, or for healers as well. So an off tank has often been this rotating role of like moving around to take up damage and soak up damage away from other people who are like who need a reprieve, or like our main tank is low on health. Off tank, get in there, start mitigating that damage. Healer, heal up the main tank, and there you go. Like that's one of the options there. What this does is either everybody is going to have to learn how to peel, period, and like a main tank, like as a tank, you're not going to be able to peel anymore, because the moment you try to peel, it takes away from you tanking, and that's why main tanks don't necessarily peel very often, because your job as the main tank is to take the focus and brunt of damage. Peeling means you're leaving yourself open to attack, or you're leaving other members of your team much more vulnerable.
So dumb
yeah.
strategy here.
Yeah.
But if everybody is focus firing on one person, has the other team thought about doing the same and taking out like their targets or whatever? It seems like, I mean, you're describing a very you can only do defense. So how do you how do you counter that and get the one up or whatever? Yeah. Is that because is the scenario you're outlining is like, oh, they took somebody out, so now it's a 6v5 run, and they're able to dominate a little bit more.
Yes and no. You're supposed to be doing all this defense while at the same time you're trying to focus fire on a member of the other team. Mm-hmm. You're trying to do both at once. It's not one or the other. You have to be. Overwatch is a game that's very cool because you have to be on the offense while also thinking about your defense on that high level. On the base level, it's a clown fiesta. Everybody's doing their own thing anyway. Like bronze, silver, gold tier, that's just what's happening anyway. Don't worry about it. But if you want to get better at the game, this is kind of the strategies you have to learn. You have to learn, when am I peeling? When am I falling back? When are when are we doing things? Where's my positioning?
That's thing how you get better. I do not care about getting better at this game at all.
That's fair.
It's the same as for the last now almost 2 seasons of Fortnite, I'm hopping in every day. I'm playing the Team Rumble stuff, and I'll just get into an encounter where it's like, okay, there's definitely a lot of builders in this game, so I'm not going to do well in this game. And I'm fine with that, because I just don't have the patience to learn that side of the game. I'm just fine being like, whatever, I'll try and get a rocket launcher and just take out a few of those guys. No big deal.
There we go. I think when it comes to that sort of stuff, so either that has to be done, either other roles have to learn how to peel naturally, or, and this is what I feel will actually be the thing that happens, is that the very not the composition, but the very fundamentals of how you play Overwatch will have to change. And my biggest disappointment from the interviews and all the live streams and everything is the way the developers have been afraid to approach and say what is very obvious, which is, which is I think going to be the more likely case and the outcome of the 5v5, which is it's a new game, it's a new style of play. Everything you know about fundamentals, about how you use maps, how you move around, how you move as a unit, all of that is gone. It's just gone. What DPS, what tank, and what support means are it's changed. It's a fundamental change, and there are 2 points. So there's the general it was very, very difficult to watch, because at one of the maps they were showing off, somebody used Roadhog, but here's the thing: Roadhog hasn't been redesigned yet for Overwatch 2, or at least his design is incomplete. So they were using base Overwatch Roadhog, and it was so obvious that he is all the old tanks aren't set up for this new one yet, and even the ones that are, people are trying to play them as traditional tank roles not the way that they are now designed to be used. And so that was very painful to watch because it's very clear that the people who were playing weren't. So that's why I didn't want to be like they're bad. They could be good Overwatch players, but the game that they were playing is not Overwatch anymore. It's Overwatch 2, whatever that means, whatever that is. And so them trying to play 6v6 style Overwatch with your tank role and your designated roles without an off tank to heal for everybody is like, that's what we're seeing as being the problem there. So I don't know if they were bad or not. They could have been good, but this new Overwatch isn't like, if you try to play it the same way that you play 6v6, it's not going to go well. And the second thing that really I was extremely disappointed by, but the thing is, during the stream, they never addressed that. They never address any of this. And the second thing that I was really disappointed is they had a professional tank player, super for the San Francisco Shock, come in and ask him some questions. And he asked probably what is, I think, the most important question that was asked by anybody. And I am extraordinarily disappointed in how poorly the Blizzard staff, the developer staff, dodged the question. Or rather, I should say they attempted to dodge the question. It was very obvious that they were not being very successful at dodging it.
Was this whole thing pre-recorded or was it live streamed? So like it was presumably a live question coming in.
It was live streamed, but my theory about how it was done is the gameplay that we were watching was pre-recorded, but the actual interviews and stuff were live, live at the time.
So because before we dive into what that question was and how they bungled the answer, you just setting that up as a premise, immediately I have flashbacks to guy at BlizzCon saying, "Is this a joke?" On the Diablo mobile thing.
No, not like that. It's not as bad as that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like clearly Activision Blizzard has not learned their lesson in let's have these things be not pre-scripted or let's not control the messaging. So what did SF Shock come and say about this redesign of tanks?
Yeah, super ass. He asked a question, which is, at what point did you guys abandon the 6v6 design philosophy and choose this 5v5 philosophy, and what is this 5v5 philosophy built around? And I'm paraphrasing his question, and the answer was essentially, Overwatch since its inception has always been moving around and shifting in how people play the game and what that means for design. So it's not really that different than that was the answer, basically. It's not as different as anything else that's ever happened before in the history of Overwatch. So people shouldn't be worried about it.
And so how much of this presentation was geared towards the diehards like you and the people that are how much of Overwatch 2 in general is geared towards the diehards like you versus everybody else that bought that game and helped it make it game of the year and the millions and millions of people that are much more casual players. What do you think the makeup of that audience is, do you think?
I don't know. Because diehards like me, there are a large number of us, which is interesting enough. Because diehards like me care about the Overwatch League.
I mean, I would even just say how many people watch the average Overwatch League tournaments or matches and stuff like that. Do you know view numbers?
It depends.
Stuff?
It depends because it's split between two regions right now. It's not uncommon for them to get on a regular basis 100,000.
Okay.
In the audience. I don't know what their YouTube numbers are. Those were the old Twitch numbers. YouTube numbers, from what I understand, are much larger because it's a larger just audience in general, YouTube versus Twitch.
Yeah. Plus, but YouTube is much more people will watch it after the fact, and people wouldn't do that as much on Twitch. They didn't do the VOD, so.
Yeah, no, that was a major issue. In fact, a lot of the because they used to break out the videos from Twitch, the VOD, and put it on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And they those videos did really well on YouTube as well. People watching them afterwards. So all having it just on YouTube, I imagine the numbers are, if not the same, more. Especially since things are different now. But it's also question of regions, because APAC is in Asia Pacific.
Yeah.
Which means that they're doing their stuff at 3:00 in the morning here.
Mm-hmm.
And so like what their numbers are, I don't know exactly what they are, but like I wouldn't be surprised if it's an average of 100 to 150K live.
Okay. It like we just so often I think we get caught up in our own little bubble, which is a very like I would argue small, portion of the larger gaming kind of ecosystem. And so I just always try and like have those things in the back of my mind. Like the your Call of Duty, everybody saying every year like Call of Duty is going to fail. This is the year that isn't going to do it for Call of Duty or whatever. It's like, no, Call of Duty consistently sells 15 plus million units, guys, like compared to like your fan favorite games that don't sell anywhere near that. Like, settle down. Just because you think that's the narrative around this thing doesn't mean it's the actual narrative around this thing. So kind of comparing, because like especially like you say 5v5 is the new going to be the new meta in Overwatch, and I'm like, okay, I don't follow esports really enough at all, but like I think of Rainbow Six Siege has 5v5. I think of League of Legends and Dota are 5v5, right? So like that seemed like, if anything, Overwatch seemed more like the outlier at 6v6. So I don't know, but again, I don't know enough about any of really this competitive ecosystem to really weigh in on that. But that's like I immediately think they're simplifying it, or they're bringing it onto kind of a more standard game design mentality.
So I forgot that there was an article, like several articles that came out that said that viewership actually dropped in 2020, in season 3 because of the switch to YouTube. It dropped down to about 63,000 per average stream. Also because they separated out the divisions and everything, like, so the average was about 63,000. However, what I've since learned is that it has gone up to about 95,000 per stream.
Okay.
So
even that
is something
that is a it's not an insignificant portion of your audience, but it's also a very small portion of your audience compared to everybody that bought and played Overwatch.
For sure. Yeah. But I mean, it's also important to note that Overwatch came out in 2016.
Right.
So a lot of people have quote unquote fallen off. How many of those people are interested in coming back on? I don't know. I think that's still up in the air. I don't think that this,
I think there's a lot of stuff that will, ultimately play a factor in that. Like that you mentioned the PvE mode, and it's like, I remember when that got announced, I was like, oh, if that's, a story-esque mode or something like that, I might be willing to hop into that in the same way that I hop into a Smash Brothers game, because there's a lot of cool, fun characters, and if there's like an interesting story mode to this, and I can play it without hopping online and getting my teeth kicked in by a whole bunch of people I don't know, I'm gonna have a better time with that. So yeah, I saw that the mechanics of Overwatch were you sound in the first round. So if there is an element that allows that in specifically solo play, I guess, because if it's like a horde mode and I still have to like get on with a whole bunch of randos, I'll run into the same my same kind of aversion that I've had in the past. But yeah, like I mean, like that more than any of this stuff, certainly it would be what entices me to give Overwatch 2 a chance.
Think of it more like Diablo 3.
Okay.
That's very much how I would explain the PvE mode the last time we saw it, which was at BlizzCon 2019. Or maybe it was 2018 when they announced it. I don't know. I think it actually was, because the 2019 was dominated by the is this a joke?
Yeah.
And the like numerous actually that might have been 2018 was the is this a joke? Because 2019
it might have all been at the same time, and
it wasn't, because Diablo 4 Overwatch 2 and
oh, that's right. Yeah, that was a like, hey, here's a make good year.
Here's a make good year, because we are enforcing China's social policies on our platforms.
Let's pull the news away from Free Hong Kong and give them all the things they want, so they'll shut up about that.
Which didn't help, because people were going in panels and asking questions, and
didn't help.
Thank you so much for asking that question. Not a problem. Also, Free Hong Kong, and they would pass off the mic, and it's like, yeah,
sure, but it helped in the exact way they wanted it to, in that
Oh yeah,
all
for
of the
sure.
news stories that were
Yep.
going up on IGN and Kotaku and everything were now about Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4 instead of Free Hong Kong.
For,
So,
yeah, for anybody who thinks that I'm a Blizzard shill because of how much I love their products, if you Google my name, I don't know if it still does it, but for a period of time, if you Googled my name and then put Blizzard after it in a Google image search, it came up with an image that I created in MS Paint where I put the president of Blizzard Studios face on the treasure goblin from Diablo 3. And basically, I wrote an entire scathing article about the bribery at BlizzCon and like how horribly disappointing it was that news outlets had completely shifted away from talking about the human rights issue.
yeah. I mean,
And
like,
all of that.
we see that
So,
every time. We see, like, I
yeah.
mean, think about all the stuff that happened at Ubisoft last summer, and then as soon as, Assassin's Creed Valhalla gets a trailer, boom, all that news is shuffled away, and even like this last week, I feel like I was seeing stories that were basically like a year on and not much has changed at Ubisoft, but
Yep.
like the narrative changed. So
Yeah, it did.
yeah.
Like, yeah, it's those sorts of things. Like,
Yeah, it's a PR
so, like,
beat. PR,
yeah.
those like AAA PR, very good at what they do,
Oh, for
as
sure.
disgusting as it is.
Yeah, 100%. Like, let's be very clear here. I'm not imagining I'm ever going to get a job at Blizzard.
Yeah,
That's never happening.
fair.
As like, there's no way I'm ever getting a job there. Not just because I'm outspoken, but because like for a period of time, if you put my name in with Blizzard, Google image searched, something I made came up that basically said the president of Blizzard coming out and saying we're sorry, in then giving everybody all the things that we've asked for years is the equivalency of a fat treasure goblin letting us have access to his hoard.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not feel shame about that. I'm slightly proud of that article that I wrote. I'm proud of the article I wrote. I'm slightly proud of the image that I made. I'm not usually proud of those images. They're very poor quality, but I think that they're fun to make. Now the ones I do that are better now with Photoshop, or in this case, Resolve, that I make are much better in my opinion. In fact, I actually have one as like my background on my phone, which is the one from my Devil May Cry 5 one, which is the me with the. Well, you can't see it; it's because of the light and everything. But it's,
is it basically you on every Devil May Cry character in that like
no, it's just
poster?
because the cover of Devil May Cry 5 is the main characters have their backs to the
Mm-hmm.
to the viewer, so you're seeing their back, but then you have like all those demons around.
Yeah,
The demon flies, and so
Yeah.
I put my head on every single one of those demons.
That's what I was referring to. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, that is that one. That's my lock screen.
Anyway,
That's great.
any final closing thoughts here on Overwatch 2 to bring us back on topic?
Oh, for sure. My closing thoughts are, I don't know how like this changes fundamentally. Like I said, this changes fundamentally how Overwatch is played, what Overwatch is even going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And until we get like more people, streamers, content creators, and professional players' hands on it, I don't know if we will fully understand if or when that will happen, like what's going to happen with that. So, also, this game is not going to come out anytime soon. 2022 is even looking bleak.
Mm-hmm.
I don't imagine that we'll see this game until late 2022 or even 2023, just from what we saw.
And when it does come out, is that like, because obviously like part of the whole mentality was like, hey, Overwatch 2, like, like you will still be able to play with all the Overwatch like one, like it's going to use the same client and all that stuff. So like when Overwatch 2 comes out, does 6v6 just go away, or is there still going to be like original Overwatch, like, or are they basically just going to, in Overwatch 1, if you're trying to play Overwatch 1, you're gonna be forced into 5v5 games?
You'll be forced into 5v5.
Okay.
There will definitely be 6v6 classic modes in the arcade section of Overwatch client. No doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
I believe actually, like multiplayer and PvE is still going to be 6v6. That might change. I don't know yet.
So then is 5v5 something that they may introduce in as a new mode prior to Overwatch 2? Do you think to maybe
Probably
try and start like getting people used to that idea?
Yes and no. Like it wouldn't make sense because the kits for the characters aren't set up yet for it. So like you're not, like I mentioned earlier, Roadhog being played in Overwatch 2 against tanks that have been already overhauled with their kits and everything. Like Reinhardt's stronger. There are now passive abilities on just about every character. Tank characters especially have these like really powerful passive abilities now that make them extremely hard to like bop around. Like it's can't like things are so much different with how the characters are built in Overwatch 2, and this is part of what I was saying, like we don't know what it's going to look like anymore. Because they even mentioned they're like, we might even take away flashbang away from McCree, and it's like, well, so people are just going to play dive all the time now, aren't they? Like, what's the point? Like, nothing can stop dive, it looks like, which is an inside talk for the meta right now. But yeah, it's like I don't know.
Overwatch 2 going to be a more different game than people were anticipating from every other time they've talked about Overwatch 2. It sounds like
very different. But this also brings up the point. Before, I was not worried about Overwatch 2 being good. I was not worried about Overwatch 2 being successful because I'm like, it's pretty much the same thing. We're getting it updated, overhaul on a bunch of stuff, like a lot of fixes. And a big point to mention is Overwatch 1, the engine that it's built off of, is not a FPS built from the ground up engine.
Yeah, we talked about this a few weeks back. It's an MMO engine.
Yeah.
Which
means like the way damage calculations are done is through a modified RNG MMO system. That is it. Like it's so them getting for me, my excitement was we will see balance changes a lot sooner than later. A lot of the problems with maps and stuff and characters and kits and whatnot will be changed up to make it easier. And I still think that'll be the case, but like what it does for 5v5 is still big in my question. I don't know yet. We'll see. We'll have to wait and see.
All right. Moving on, let's tell me about the passing of Kentaro Miura. I saw this. You mentioned you wanted to dive into it, and I basically described that, yes, I had never heard of this person or Berserk, the kind of his opus, prior to this last week when I started seeing videos of a whole bunch of Dark Knight players in Final Fantasy XIV lining up in tribute of this man's passing. So fill me in on the significance of that and the rationale behind it, and then just your personal thoughts on Berserk and the man himself.
So what happened is Kentaro Miura was an author of the manga Berserk. He was noted for and very notable for at a time when anime and manga was being dominated by these by what's called bishonen, or these pretty boys in anime, very much like or like in like the softness and the tone of anime and manga at the time was very much in the line of beautiful people being beautiful and doing beautiful things. It's about these aesthetically pleasing things in regards to this is like around the era of Cardcaptor Sakura, which is I know not a shonen but a shoujo, something built to be beautiful by women for women. But this idea of like beauty and aesthetical beauty being like beautiful people are good, ugly people are bad, very much was being canonized. And Miura was a brand new manga author coming out of college, and he wanted to be successful. But his friends told him, you should really find something to do yourself that is both artistically satisfying to you, but at the same time is telling a story that you want to tell. And taking that very basic advice, he built out this saga of the story of a man who is not a good man, who is a man who is not the strongest. And that's another thing that was at the time, was the main character is the strongest person in the world, or the main character is like trying to become the strongest person. Berserk is a story about a man trying to survive. It's the story of a hero called Guts who, or rather and it's one of the earlier anti-heroes, especially in manga and anime. Guts was literally born from a corpse. His mother was hung, and while she was pregnant with him, and he survived after her corpse as she was dying literally gave birth, and he was found by a group of mercenaries who were just going to leave him because he being born from a corpse is bad luck, and it means the child's going to be cursed for their entire life. And a woman who had had a miscarriage, who was having some clear postpartum issues, saw the infant, saw that it was alive, and grabbed it and nursed it. And the leader of the mercenary band, it was his lover, and so he decided to let it, if she's going to take care of the child, the child will be brought with them. And that's the origin of that's his origin. So he was raised in this mercenary company, and in order to he was not treated oh, you're this golden, wonderful child. He, at the age of 6 or 7, was given a sword, an actual short sword to use. And so his care, and this is a backstory that Miura created later for him to explain why Guts has this giant sword that he uses. It's the size of a table. It's just a giant slab of iron called the Dragon Slayer. And this character is built up to be a character who struggles and is cursed. And your introduction to him is this very brutal, very vengeful character. And then Miura goes back and tells the origin of Guts and tells the life of Guts. And it's this character who struggles. He's called the struggler by one of the more omnipotent characters in the series. Does not have spiritual, supernatural abilities. He does not have, the only thing he has is his motivation and his grit and determination to overcome great things. And this very basic story that started out in the 90s had an enormous impact on culture in video games, anime, comic books, and everything else, and literature worldwide. It slowly seeped its way into the cultural zeitgeist for several things. The world of Dark Souls, Dark Souls itself, and the world of Dark Souls, is heavily based on the world of Berserk.
Mm-hmm. I saw Imran
yeah,
basically tweet something out to that effect.
It's to the point where, to honor him, they put his armor in the game as a DLC. It is no joke that the idea of dark fantasy that we enjoy now is heavily influenced by his work in people fighting against fate, fighting against causality. He also delved into a lot of things about the omnipotent but neutral nature of our creation, our creator. He dives into religion and belief and faith and the powers that those hold in a supernatural sense that can be used for good and evil. It's there's so much that he goes into, and it's so influential that he tells this story, but he's telling a story about a man who's trying to just survive in this world and to make his way through it and accomplish his goals. And over time, the closest thing he gets to, basically the closest thing he gets to becoming supernaturally powerful is he gets a set of armor that, makes him stronger, but not in the sense that, oh, it's a super powered suit. It just lets him ignore the limitations of his body, but the damage of those limitations still goes through. For example, if his arm gets broken, it will actually reset the break in his arm and reinforce the break with spikes. And so he'll the previous user of the armor literally was drained of his blood by the armor in a battle. So it's the Berserker armor is what that is. And you think, oh, so he gets that at the beginning. No, way into it. Miura does this, that he just like the payoff for these things is way later down the road. Like
So, so the thing was just called Berserk for years, and then finally his armor comes into play.
Well, so it's called Berserk because Guts oftentimes in the middle of battle will go into a berserker rage.
Okay.
Like he is very much built that way. But another thing they do is like another thing about Guts is that Guts is like he is handicapped. He is missing his left arm, and he's missing like the sight in one of his eyes. So in order to compensate for that, he has this gauntlet built out that has a cannon built into it. So that the hand literally falls down, shows a cannon barrel, and shoots.
Okay, so that sounds like a character I'm familiar with.
Yeah. Like these, he also has like a crossbow attachment, so he can do a rapid crossbow shooting. Like, there's so much about it, but the biggest influence that ever happened was the big sword. This is pre-Final Fantasy VII, by the way. And yes, Cloud's Buster Sword is greatly inspired by Guts' Dragon Slayer.
I mean, clearly so is just Barrett's gun arm. It sounds
gun arm,
like.
Once again, yes, Barrett's gun arm. Final Fantasy VII was greatly, like, characters' design were greatly inspired. Tetsuya Nomura said he was greatly inspired by Berserk, which was gaining popularity at the time. And like they're like, we should have the like what should we have that sets apart our character? Spiky blonde hair, okay, well, but what else? A giant sword. And like it comes from that. And so for now to move on to your question of like why Final Fantasy XIV, the Dark Knight character is very much built off of, so the character Guts is often called the Black Swordsman. And his giant sword, the Dragon Slayer, like I mentioned, actually the way that it cuts people is not because it has a sharp edge, but because it's so heavy that your body literally can't stop it from splitting you in half. And Guts' strength, because over the years he always carried swords that were much bigger than him. And so now he's the only man in the world that can wield this Dragon Slayer. And what's cool about the Dragon Slayer is that about like 2/3 of the way through the series, it's commented on that this Dragon Slayer, this regular sword, has killed so many supernatural creatures with just the absurdity of its size and everything. Just being able to, like, it doesn't matter if you have reinforced skin, this thing doesn't care. It will still go through you because he's still swinging it at you. And what it does is that it has picked up, like, because it's killed so many supernatural creatures, it in and of itself has become kind of an anti-supernatural weapon. It's not a holy weapon, but rather supernatural creatures are weak to it because it has cut through the barrier between the natural world and the supernatural world so many times to kill something. And it's been drenched in the blood of these supernatural creatures. Like, thousands of supernatural creatures have had their blood drenched into the sword and seeped into it to the point where now it's a quote-unquote special sword. But even then, it's still not like a super powered sword or anything. It just means that it can better affect the supernatural world at that point. So like, move that into Final Fantasy XIV, this Dark Knight archetype class that is built out. It has the two-handed sword. It has like the natural armor, like coloring for Dark Knights is black. The poses, the some of the abilities, the plunge ability that is a standard encounter start for level 60, or actually I think it's level 70 Dark Knights going forward, is this literal circular plunge of a sword, like bringing the sword forward down into a cleave that is literally taken from like one of the panels of the manga and like one of the scenes from the anime. And it's incredible. And at its core, it's just the story of a man who struggles to survive and who like has everything thrown against him, fate, causality. He has been seriously mutilated, and the struggles and trials he goes through are so much greater than anybody else's, and he just continues to move forward. He doesn't stop moving forward, and the best part is he's not considered noble for it. The world that he lives in doesn't like that, like, because everybody else doesn't do that. Everybody else falls to causality, they fall to fate, and so they resent him for it. And so he's resented and he's hated and he's thought poor of. And like in his very first introduction in the series, after he quote unquote saves people and like solves the problem, he's cursed and scorned at and hated by the people he saves. And it's because he refuses to submit to the lies that people tell themselves to make the world better for themselves. And he is this awesome character because of that. And Miura wrote this character for 30 plus years and wrote these stories, and he inspired millions of people, like myself included. Like, this story of Guts is inspiring, not because he is triumphant, but because he just tries. He doesn't stop trying. And no matter what terrible things happen to him, like, and let's be fair here, this is a seinen, which means it's for like older teens to adults, to adult men. So the stuff that happens in Berserk is much more adult themed and oriented. And so like, this is not like, and this story, let me tell you, this story is not for the faint of heart.
I mean, based on his origin that you described, I was like, okay, this is definitely not a Pokemon type or My Hero Academia type of anime or manga
story. Yeah. Let me tell you, that's like the least horrible stuff out there. Like that is the niceties. That's like the upside of Guts' life, is that happens to him. Mm-hmm. The downside to Guts' life is far worse.
Yeah.
So much worse.
So
oh my gosh.
One of the other comparisons I feel like I was seeing around there was kind of like a connection or a link to like George R. R. Martin and obviously like the Game of Thrones saga, because Berserk is, if I understand correctly, an unfinished work now. Like he did not finish the story that he was telling because of this passing, right? It has been an ongoing story.
It has been an ongoing story. It's taken several breaks because of his health. Like what he died from is something that is very common in men of his age, which is he had something happened with his heart that it got detached and caused heart failure. That's super common with people who are in his age group who are very overworked. Mm-hmm. He is, and this is part of why he's so amazing, is it's not just the story he wrote. He drew everything himself. He had assistants that did, assistance work, but he himself drew some of like the most gorgeous, and I mean just outright gorgeously detailed panels that you will ever see in your entire life. They are absolutely like masterpieces of artwork. Because he studied art and he studied design and he studied these things so in depth that even with 90s technology and artistic standards, it's still some of the best drawn and designed stuff of all time. Now, a lot of it's macabre, a lot of it's horrific, but it also plays into it's just so fascinating to see some of his stuff and some of the artwork that he has designed over the years. And like the very strange places that he took inspiration from. One of the main villains, Femto, his armor, like helmet design, is based off of a late 80s like film that is a retelling of Phantom of the Opera.
Okay. So it was like is it like a half mask kind of helmet or something?
No, so the helmet is like almost bird designed.
Okay.
But it's taken very directly from the helmet design of the Phantom character from this film. I can't recall what the film's actually called.
It'd be like if one of the helmets or something was very clearly a Stormtrooper helmet or something like that. It's that kind of like, but obviously Stormtrooper much more iconic and stuff. But that's what I'm just making the connection there. It's very clear that this is a reference to that very specific piece of art. Yes. Gotcha.
Yes. But think so much more niche.
Yeah.
So much more niche. Like he consumed so much media. He was just so in touch with media as a whole, and his work is built off of these just brilliant designs, just absolutely brilliant designs. His characters that he wrote were real and fleshed out, and you felt for them and you loved them. to the point where the main villain is somebody that a lot of people are just like, listen, I know he's evil. I know he's the worst person in existence, and he's really, really terrible. But I love his character. Like, to the point where they understand. Like, it's just such a great piece of work, piece of art. And Miura's passing right when he was about to start getting more active again in like putting the story together, is absolutely tragic. Like, it's absolutely tragic that it's currently an unfinished work, but there is talks because the publisher who publishes it, it's their most popular work. And his assistants have been told that nothing is off the table as far as like completing it.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of thought because in the time that he'd taken off, it was kind of to plot out like what would be the final arc for the series. And so like there's still a lot of things up in the air. We might see a finished Berserk in some shape or form. What that is, what that looks like, we don't know. But gotcha. I will tell you that the final chapters that we have right now, not the most recent ones because they're setting up the new arc, but the ending chapters for the current, or for the most previous arc, is like it's good. Like if you ended it there, a lot of people feel like if you ended it there, then it's still really good.
Okay.
His passing just hit me really hard because it just kind of came out of nowhere, and to think that like it's like if they make the decision we want to honor his legacy by not finishing his work, or if we want to continue it going forward with his original manuscripts or whatnot, like it's an absolute tragedy that he passed. But especially like with an unfinished work like this it's brutal. Mm-hmm. It's like it really hit me in the heart. It was last Sunday. I was on TikTok. It was like 2 a.m. I had just gone to the bathroom. I'd woken up and gone to the bathroom and was laying down to get ready to go back to sleep. And I saw somebody, I saw a TikTok of somebody announcing that he passed. And immediately I went to Twitter, and Twitter was just filled with people already doing the lining up of the Dark Knights. Like there was just a lot going on for that. But his passing is just, it's tragic. But he wrote a panel once about Guts talking about somebody dying, doing what they loved. And Guts saying, well, he was doing what he loved, right? So if he did that, then he must have died happy. That's what a lot of people have taken away from it. Like, even if it remains an unfinished work, Miura's life work was he was working on it, and that made him happy. And if that made him happy, then it was a good death. So,
well, rest in peace, Kentaro Miura.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just seeing he actually passed away on the 6th. Yep. And then it took a while for that news to be announced, I guess, publicly and break. So
it's very common in Japan to let the people in that person's life mourn.
Yeah.
Before they publicly announce it.
Yeah. I get it.
And that's very typical. We do that oftentimes with like celebrities out here in the West as well.
Right.
But news places aren't as
there isn't there isn't like a TMZ Japan that's out there.
Yeah.
Preying on that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, let us move on then to your final topic, and the real one I had reached out to you about doing the show this week, because you sat down last night and watched Demon Slayer Mugen Train. So, yep. Tell me about this. This is a movie that I watch Charts with Dan over Dan Merle, formerly of Screen Junkies and Fandom and stuff, and he, as part of like his weekly box office like chart thing, was talking about this movie a lot late last year because it was rising in the ranks in Japan, and so like I knew prior to its release here that it had already become like the #1 movie of all time in Japan, and like, you know, topped the anime, or was near the top of the anime charts, I think all time, you know, worldwide gross. And so in the few weeks since it debuted, I knew like, oh, this is officially like the highest grossing movie of 2020 now, because because 2020 was such a weird year. And it has basically like it came out alongside Mortal Kombat, but it has continued to like do better than Mortal Kombat out there. And I want to say it's like number 2 domestic anime of all time now, behind Pokemon the first movie.
Yep.
So yeah, it's like I've seen it kind of like, you know, blowing past Spirited Away and stuff on a lot of
Oh yeah.
those related charts. And so yeah, tell me about Demon Slayer Mugen Train, as somebody who who only knows it really from that and knows that there's like an anime out there on Netflix but has not watched any of it. How what is your relationship with Demon Slayer in general, and how'd you like the movie?
So my relationship with Demon Slayer is I read the debut chapter when it was put out. I've been keeping up with this. I fell off of it because I was like, oh, like this is a good one. Like I want to see if this one sticks before I get into it, because it'll break my heart if it ends at like, 20 something issues because it wasn't popular. Boy, was I wrong. It's incredibly popular, and not just in Japan but also in the West. To the point where when the kind of climactic battle at the end of the first season of Demon Slayer came out, it trended on Twitter and was huge, trending on Twitter. People who normally don't ever talk about anime were talking about this scene, talking about this fight, like the end scene of the fight, and about how beautiful and gorgeous it was, because it is. So my history with it is I've been keeping up with it since its beginning. This is very much a My Hero Academia kind of situation for me, which is I have a hard time reconciling its popularity because it's just been something that's just been there for me. Like it's just been a constant for me. Up until last year, when at the beginning of the year last year it ended. The manga ended. It concluded. It has no more 2 chapters coming out, and it's important to note this is the author's first work. So they ended it the way they wanted to, and they've been allowed to like move on to whatever their next project is going to be, and who knows what it's going to be. But very much, I loved it. It does so much about the shonen battle kind of science. It gets just so right. And it does such a great job of telling a very heart-wrenching story. So moving forward here, and this is where kind of like I would be like, hey, listen, if you've like for most anime films based off existing properties, you don't need to be up to date with the anime on it. You just have to like watch the first couple episodes or like watch the introduction of some of these characters, know who they are, and hop into the film. One Piece is a great example of that. You don't have to watch all 1,000 episodes of One Piece. You can just go ahead and hop right into some of those movies, and they're great and wonderful. And you'll have a great time with them no matter what.
I have yet to actually sit down and watch the 2 movies that have come out so far for My Hero, but like based on my understanding, like I feel like for both of them, it's just kind of like, hey, here's like a side story, or at least for the first one, like the 2 heroes or whatever. It's like, hey, here's a side story that doesn't really, it's not going to play into the main arc of what we're looking at. It's just kind of a like, here's another adventure.
It's the same thing with Pokemon the movie.
Yeah.
Pokemon the movie is exactly that. Like base stuff, you don't have to be very invested into it. You can go watch it and have a good time. It's a good movie.
Yeah.
That is not the case for Demon Slayer.
Demon Slayer is very much tied into the story it's telling. Okay.
It's not just tied into it. It's part of it.
Okay. Is it
so there's
saying,
arcs. Yeah.
I was just gonna real quick. So you're saying the manga is now finished.
Yes.
But the series, I'm guessing, is still kind of ongoing and still telling that story. So this is basically like a chapter of that story, compared to, being a separate standalone thing or something like that. Okay.
It's an arc. So, prior to this, there was the Spider Mountain arc that ended the way that it did, and then had its short transition period that acted as the finale, and like the finale for season 1. Ufotable, who is the studio that worked on the show, instead of like moving into the next season, moved into starting development on the movie. So Ufotable, who is the studio who did the anime, is now the studio that did the anime film as well. And rather than say, well, we'll tell an original story, what they did is they took one of the shorter arcs, which is the Mugen Train, the Demon Train arc, and said, here we go. Here is a very like short but very impactful part of the story that would normally only be a couple episodes, like maybe 3 or 4 episodes. So it's a much shorter arc. But what happens into it is so impactful and so powerful. We can make it into a film.
Gotcha.
And they do.
It'd be
it's great.
So is it like if Final Fantasy VII were a series, the movie could basically be like, hey, we're all in calm, and now we're going to tell you the story of, Sephiroth and Nibelheim. It'd be that kind of thing that can be a standalone thing, but also is, drastically informing the bigger story. I want to see how you handle this. I want to challenge you in 2 minutes. I've got my stopwatch app pulled up. In 2 minutes, sell me on why I should watch Demon Slayer. You ready?
Sure.
Okay, go.
Yeah. Demon Slayer is the story about a pair of siblings whose family is massacred by a mysterious figure who has infected the sister of the pair with what is essentially like demonic vampirism. And it is his story of climbing through the ranks of this organization called the Demon Slayers, the Demon Slaying Corps, and his trial and adventure to try to figure out a way to save his sister, while at the same time saving other people and finding the person responsible for killing his family, and maybe has the secret of turning his sister back into a human.
Okay, wait, I lost why his sister isn't a human.
She was infected with demonic vampirism by
Gotcha.
by the demon who massacred their family. In it, there is a bunch of cool sword fighting and cool like demon transformations and abilities, and they use breathing techniques to essentially do super cool, powerful, superhuman sword maneuvers. And it's stylistic as all fuck. It's so good.
Okay. I mean, you got 40 seconds to go. And I will
40
say,
seconds to go still? Okay, cool.
I will say I was not expecting breathing techniques in a 2-minute pitch for why I should watch a thing.
The breathing techniques also separated into like elemental forms, and they're all based off of like sword movements along with it. And the fighting is just epic and cool, and it's about like it's super awesome. There are awesome characters, and there's one character named Inosuke who is a teenage boy that wears a boar head mask, and he is just an absolute wild man, and he's hilarious, and he's my favorite character in the show.
Okay.
And the characters are all wild and awesome and cool.
All right. And the selling of Inosuke, I recognize that because Jessica Nigri has done like cosplay of that character, and I like every time I see it I'm like, what the hell is up with this boarhead character? And I see like her in particular doing a ton of stuff with it. So okay,
he's the best.
So now I have context for where that is great. From.
Yes, it's from Demon Slayer. Inosuke was like raised in the mountains by a boar, basically, and like so he's like that. Like he is a boar man, and he like. When he meets a train, he thinks it's like the spiritual deity of the land that they're on, and he's made it his goal to kill it and take his position as leader of the land. But it's a train.
Yeah. So he tries to suplex it based on our conversations of last week, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. He tries to suplex it with his swords.
Yes.
And then they're caught by like this is how the last episode of the last season of the first season ends is. The cop sees that they have swords and says, "There's a man with a boar's head mask trying to decapitate a train. Like stop him!" And like they get in trouble and they have to hide for a bit. Anyway,
all right. So
he's great. He's great. He's obnoxious. He's just out of the world, like nutso insane, and he's great. I love him.
Is he like an antagonist to the main characters? Is he like a sidekick? Is he a fellow demon slayer?
He's a fellow demon slayer, yeah.
Okay.
But his breathing technique is entirely self-made. He made it himself. He got introduced to the demon slayers because demon slayers heard reports of a monster person on a mountain with a boar's head, and they thought it was a demon, and they found out that it was actually this guy. And when they tried to like beat him up to like get him to stop harassing people and stealing from people, he beat them up and took their swords. And that's where he got his swords. And then he ended up like going to take the test like to become a demon slayer because they told like somebody basically said, "Hey, you should go do this.
Okay.
Like you'd be really good at it." And so he's basically trying to become the top demon slayer so that he'll be the boss of all the demon slayers because his idea is like the strong rule over the weak,
Mhm.
and that's what he's there to do.
Okay.
Is to rule over everybody. He wants to take over the world by his strength alone. He's great. He's so
So
good.
the film, how in terms of like I guess like animation style, you're
Well,
saying
wait,
it's the same.
Did I sell it? Did I sell it well?
I mean, yeah,
You gave me 2 minutes.
I gave you 2 minutes, and to your credit, like you, I think because I gave you 2 minutes, you didn't do like your tangents into like all of the lore of the demonic vampirism,
Yes,
what that means.
You're
and
right. I didn't.
Who all of
You're
that.
right.
So,
I didn't.
so like it forced you to kind of like stay at a surface level. I think just because like you were still talking about it a lot in a way of like that describes it to people who know it. But as somebody who does not, I was like, I did not kind of like connect back in until you were like Boar's Head. And even that was like, oh, I recognize that iconography or something like that. So
Yeah.
I'm still very.
Well, at the beginning. I summarized basically what the show is.
Okay.
Boy trying to save his sister joins a demon
Yeah.
slaying corps who are a bunch of like cool dudes who use breathing techniques with swordplay to be able to kill demons that otherwise are unstoppable.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, and the demons themselves are really awesome too because they're well designed and they have like cool demonic powers and abilities and stuff and spells and magic and cool shit.
Yeah. I mean, it's on Netflix, so maybe I'll give a couple episodes a shot.
It's great. It's great. And on top of that, what was I going to say about something? Not about Inosuke, but like Trevor, you don't understand. There is so much lore. There is so much lore, and it's so good, and it's told in like a really good way, and it's just so good, Trevor. It's so good. It's so fucking good.
We had this whole conversation before we started recording that like your audio is a weird thing for me to try and balance, and so now I'm just gonna have to go into that section and be like, okay, how do I adjust this? Where he got right up on his mic for the first time this episode. So cool. Apologies to our audience that does not love ASMR and just got that chunk. But yeah, it's so you were a
My
fan
lore
going
ASMR?
in, and this
My lore ASMR,
yeah. How did the film stack up? Like, were you
great.
going in with expectations? What
Yeah, I had expectations.
Okay.
I expected it to be at least like animated as well as the show, and what it really turned out to be was it was a lot better. Not necessarily like better quality, but like it's clear they took their time to really flesh out and really give an impact to a lot of the things that are going on in it. The story of Demon Slayer, like I mentioned, is very, very sad. There's a lot of tragedy in it because what puts these people on this path of slaying these demons is not altruism. It's the tragedy inherent in their lives. Tanjiro, who's the main character, his family gets slaughtered. And the only reason he wasn't there was because like a snowstorm came in while he was like, because he's a charcoal burner or he's a charcoal maker. And so he's a woodcutter and he cuts down wood, burns it into charcoal, goes into town and sells it. On his way back, a snowstorm hit. And so a person who lives at the bottom of the mountain that he lives on offered him to let him stay there overnight. And so he wasn't there with his family when this demon came in and slaughtered them all. And unintentionally gave his and it's not just like, oh, his mom or his dad was already dead, but it's like he's the oldest of like 6 siblings. And you see that all of his siblings have been killed except his sister. And so his introduction to his demonic sister is she's almost dead. He knows she is alive. He takes her and he's trying to run her down the mountain to save her life.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's introduced to one of the big cool demon slayer guys who is trying to kill his sister all of a sudden.
As I was going to say, so one of my follow-up questions there was like, is the fact that she is a vampire put him at odds and the demon slayer's at odds with him or her, or does he just kind of have to keep her hidden while he tries to find a solution?
Yes and no.
Okay.
It's a major plot point that he is a demon slayer running around with a big wooden box strapped to his back that his demon sister lives inside of. Because a thing to note is demonic vampirism. I use that as a term because I really didn't think of it as vampirism until my brother-in-law pointed out last night that they're basically vampires because it's feeding through, like giving blood to turn you into one. Like a lot of the mechanics work the same as vampirism, but
but more demony. Got it.
But more demony. Yeah, very very demonic, oni, like ogreish type stuff. Very very a lot of cool stuff. Like, but the abilities are drastically varied. In like, it's not like, oh, this demon does this thing, and then this demon does the same thing, but it's a little bit different. All completely different abilities. Some of them are really cool, like that toy with the power and like the net, like the very nature of like physics of the world. Some are much more mystical. Some, like, there's one demon that she literally has an interdimensional space that she controls with her traditional Japanese like string instrument. That is just wild and cool. And the main guy at one point when he's introduced, the main bad guy is looks a lot like Michael Jackson.
Okay, sure.
And the reason I say that is because he's it's the outfit he's wearing was a popular style of outfit to wear. So it takes place in the early 1900s. This is not like feudal Japan. This is like early 1900s. So there's trains, people, like, it's not like that at all. But like it's super cool. So he's wearing like a very like the style of like the classic white jacket, white hat look that Michael Jackson had was extremely popular back in the early 1900s.
Okay.
And so the guy who has it just happens to be a pale dude.
Kind of a
with
zoot suit
the
look?
Outfit. Very zoot suit look. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
So,
when you were like, he looks like Michael Jackson, and the thing is set in, I was not expecting 1900s. I was expecting you to be like 1980s. And I was like, oh, okay. So 1900s,
that very classic Moonwalker suit that he wears is is a pull from the zoot suit era. So.
Yeah. The zoot suit and gangster kind of time period. Okay. Very cool.
Yep.
Any closing thoughts on Demon Slayer then?
If you
the
watch
series
the
or the movie.
Yeah, if you are interested at all in understanding like what this show is or why people think it's cool, and maybe like pick up the manga or watch the anime, like do yourself a favor. It's good stuff.
Mm-hmm. I definitely think the fact that it's out there and available on Netflix probably has really helped bolster it, because it got it in front of a ton of people in the lead up to the movie coming out, and then if people are hearing like, hey, this movie sounds cool, or they're hearing good things about the movie, they can go basically catch up on the anime before they go see it. So very cool.
It's very cool. Also, his demon sister, because of the trauma that she encountered with the slaughtering of her family and everything, she's regressed back to like a toddler like personality. So he's very much like like taking care of this, like, but she's also like a super powerful demon girl, and it's just the dichotomy is awesome. Nezuko is great as a character. All the characters are just really great. They're really well, and not only are they just like well done, they're really well designed, and all of them are very different from each other. So there's no like homogenization with any of that. It's extremely good.
Okay, very cool. Well, from there, I will wrap up, and I don't know if you have much to add on this one. We talked about kind of Mass Effect Legendary Edition last week, kind of our first impressions. I've continued playing on. I imagine you've played a little bit, at least here and there, last week or so.
Yeah, I've been mostly playing it.
Yeah. So I finished Mass Effect 1, and I'm probably about 60 to 70% through Mass Effect 2. I've got almost all of like the party members unlocked. I'm just kind of working through their loyalty missions at this point. And continues to look great. This, like, the leaps in like Mass Effect 1's like quality are, I think, the clear showcase of this collection, because Mass Effect 2 doesn't seem like that far off than the Mass Effect 2 I was just playing backwards compatibility on like a couple months ago. I'm sure like some of the character models and stuff are cleaner and tighter and stuff, but like there's not as much in terms of like mechanical changes. But the one that jumped out to me almost immediately is how much faster scanning planets for like for resources goes. I love it. Thank you so much. I could have gone even further and I would have been happy, but the fact that like you're like it's almost like double speed is how quickly you can kind of like move the cursor around those things. And so yeah, it's especially having just done it, I was like, oh my god, this feels so much nicer. Thank you. That is easily the like quality of life improvement on the Mass Effect 2 in the same way that like Mass Effect 1 had the kind of the Mako improvements, and what was the elevators obviously all load up a lot quicker,
Well, yeah,
and just combat in
because
general is more
it's barely
streamlined.
even a loading screen for the elevators anymore.
Yeah.
Like the elevators literally take as long as they do because of the conversations that happen in them.
Yeah. And even there, you can skip through them still. It'll basically
Yeah,
be like, hey, you're loaded, so if you want to bypass this conversation, you can now. So yeah, I
it's great.
really, really enjoying that, and yeah, it's just, I mean, like Mass Effect 2, the I've probably made this observation in the past, but what really strikes me this time around is I think Mass Effect 1 tells a story in a much more like cinematic style of like,
Mhm.
hey, like this is a movie where there's like, an act 1, an act 2, and then an act 3 kind of structure. Whereas Mass Effect 2, and I think it continues on into Mass Effect 3, is more like a season of television where you can have like more bite-sized little narrative chunks that are, we're going to introduce you to this character, or we're going to introduce you to their loyalty mission, or whatever, or even like the side things you can do just on, on scanning random planets will tell you kind of like a, usually a 3 act story that would be its own little, filler episode of a series or something like that. And so I think that's really the big thing that I'm noticing in terms of like the pacing of the story on this one is I can be like, hey, I'm gonna hop in for an hour. That means I know I can go and do, so and so's loyalty mission, because it's not gonna be, a 3 hour investment to, in the way that like, oh, if I want to go do all of Pharos in Mass Effect 1 is like, I know that is a larger chunk of time that I'm gonna have to commit to that. So that's definitely something I'm enjoying, especially as like over the course of this last week that was just just because of my own like schedule and busyness, a much more fragmented kind of thing. So I like that the game still fit into that pretty nicely. So where are you at? Where are you sitting on Mass Effect?
I just finished Noveria, and that was the last of the 3 initial planets. I have unlocked Vermeer, but I haven't gone to it yet.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of ended things right after finishing up Noveria with the Matriarch. I'm going to go to the Citadel, finish up the side stuff there before I go to Vermeer, where I will leave Ashley to die, as we all should.
I mean, so I'm playing my mail shep, and did leave Ashley behind in this run. So I've got my bros with Caden basically, and that, but I'm planning on in my fem shep sacrificing Caden effectively, and letting Ashley's arc play out into 3, where
Her arc.
she basically becomes less racist. That's, I mean, it's,
She becomes more tolerant, but still extremely bigoted and racist.
I mean, to be fair, an alien race is trying to destroy all of the galaxy. So
be upset about that
all
one
of the
alien
universe,
race,
rather.
and then give the rest of them a pass, because it's not their fault that there's one of them out there trying to do that. Because they're also being targeted by that one race too.
Yeah.
So like, let's be fair here. Like,
I mean,
no, like she's very like her Earth first. All that stuff is just like, no,
I
get
will
that
also
out. I
point
don't
out,
want it.
like, she's not the only character like that. Like, a whole bunch of the aliens are like, we don't trust you humans, like super racist against the humans too. So, like,
Well, hold up a second.
racism is kind of the norm in this in the space. Really, the thing that's getting me
Look
even
at the
more,
history of humanity and tell them that they're wrong. Okay.
I mean, no, absolutely. The thing that's really getting me is and part of this I think is fueled obviously by like the lens that I'm experiencing the game in now, but as well as like a couple of like think pieces that I've seen kind of pop up. But like, there is definitely, especially with like all the CSEC stuff, and even the, like, I was doing the Samara recruitment mission, I think earlier today even, and just like, there is definitely a pro cop bent to to a lot of this game, and I'm like, in an era where like all cops are bastards is kind of like a very much more normal kind of sentiment. it's weird how often you're helping out the cops in this game.
Yep.
Even as a
strong
renegade,
fact.
you're still helping out the cops. You're just doing it in a wild kind of way or something like that. So it's a
No,
little
being
unsettling.
being renegade for some of these cop moments is way worse than it was before. I
Yeah.
can tell you that.
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's like,
Yep.
I don't care that you're innocent. I'll still beat you up.
Yeah. Ooh. That is not a good look there, Shepard, in 2021.
Yeah, Shepard's getting canceled in 2021. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Jeez, yeah, no. There's just like there's some stuff in this game, man. That's like that did not age well. Like just the overall.
In particular, the Mess Sergeant Gardner in Mass Effect 2 is basically picks up the sort of xenophobic racist mantle of Ashley from the first game. So he's like a lot of stuff he's saying, and I'm like, and you're not gonna like. There's like a nice little thing where like Presley in the first game is also very xenophobic, and if you have ever experienced the DLC in the second game where you basically can go back to the Normandy crash site, you'll find like a data pad that is kind of like it's got like 3 entries from him over that take place over the course of the first game basically. And like the first one is, I mean, the first 2 basically are him like, I don't trust these people that Shepard is bringing onto the party or the crew or whatever. And then the last one is like, I can't believe how wrong, like I was looking back on my earlier entries. I can't believe how wrong I was, how stupid I was.
Mm-hmm.
I would easily take a bullet and die for any of these crew members basically. So like in that, like he gets a redemption arc for his like 2 minutes in Mass Effect 2 before he dies.
Well, even like his xenophobia in first Mass Effect is greatly based off of like concerns in regards to intelligence. So like his thing is like because like letting Tally be down in the engineering bay, and he goes, I'd like the thing is he questions it. He doesn't outright say like Ashley sometimes comes off being like, just because her personality is very blunt.
Mm-hmm.
It comes off a lot more severe. Presley is like, I have security concerns about them. They're from other races, and whatnot. And it's like, and at the same time, I still told Presley to shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I would argue.
I'm Commander
argue
Shepard.
he is
I run
harsher than that, but also like he has 2 conversations that you can have with him compared to
That's true.
Ashley that has a
yeah.
Fleshed out over the course of the
you have
game
you
arc.
have pre-Eden Prime conversation with them and a post-Eden Prime conversation with them.
Yeah,
and there's like that's it. That's all you get. So I think then letting Presley have that data pad gives you kind of that more fleshed out look that you never actually get to have with Ashley, because she never really changes her viewpoint.
Over the course of the game.
Over the course of Mass Effect 1. Mass Effect. I don't know what she's like in Mass Effect 2. I've never had her in Mass Effect 2.
I mean, like, both her or Caden in Mass Effect 2 are effectively non-characters. They show up for, like, a little cameo kind of thing in there, but it's more, like, when they come back in the third game. But also, like, so one of the other things I've been doing is I've been playing through is I've been, like, checking out some of these videos online that are, like, the 10 the 10 most hidden details or most rare scenes in Mass Effect or something like that, because it's like despite the choose your own adventure nature of the game, most of the people play full Paragon or full Renegade or something like that, or they play in a specific order of events. And so like one of the videos I was watching today is like, yeah, you don't have to recruit Liara until even after Vermeer. You can basically go do the other, like all of the other planets in Mass Effect 1, and then wait until after that to recruit Liara, and Liara will come on board and she'll be like, wait, like there was a Protheon beacon and a Thorian and like you nuked a Saren base, like all of this stuff happened, and I missed the entire course of this game, which is just basically a plot line I've never seen because I've never played it in that way. And then
when I first played it, I didn't pick up Liara until right before Vermeer.
Mm-hmm.
And so like she's like, you killed my mother. It's like, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that'd be another one of those elements.
And then people are like, oh, I romanced Liara. It's like, I should like there was definitely not a vibe of I could possibly romance Liara. Go after like
Mm-hmm.
my introduction is I murdered your mom.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Well,
that's
I won't. There's another one that's in there that ties into specifically the Citadel DLC of the third game, which I won't get into for spoilers or whatever. But like, it just tied into like, oh, there are romances that I did not know existed in this game, and not all of them are great. So yeah, there's some super like, how did anybody think that was okay BioWare kind of moments that you can get if you play things out in a very specific way. And so I'm loving seeing those kinds of things. Like I'm very much for this run. I'm basically doing, pretty much full on Paragon or whatever. And I'm enjoying like that story as it's playing out. But like there's part of me that would love to just kind of like switch it up and do like the most chaotic kind of thing. Because I know that especially by the time you get to game 3, like a couple of the first party members you get are basically designed entirely around like, hey, if you played things really, really badly in the last couple of games, like this is going to be your crew. Have fun.
yep.
And so like
You don't get anybody else.
like, yeah, they're like they, GameSpot in particular, I saw had a series that was basically like the saddest party at the Citadel ever. And it's just like, they basically killed off as many characters as they could going into the Citadel DLC, and just to see what that looked like, because like that stands as one of my all-time favorite DLCs, because doing that with all the characters that you have at that point in the game, or in the saga, if you've played well, and very few of them have died or whatever, like it's just such a celebration of what I love about the series is the characters.
Mm-hmm.
But you could do that with very few of those people around, and so it just becomes a very empty, sad little party. And I love the idea that option exists out there. It's a very fascinating one to me. So yeah, that's some of the other stuff I've been doing. But in terms of like, I think we even talked about last week the idea that as a spacer, you could have you basically, that's like the one where Shepard's parents live or are alive, and so you can have like a whole little side thing.
At least
with them.
his mom is, yeah.
Yeah, I realized as I was like in MA2 that I didn't ever like find that scene or whatever in the original Mass Effect, but I did hear like a news thing basically being like, Hannah Shepard has decided to take on a command in honor of her son. Like that was and I was like, oh, cool, that's right, yeah, my my mom at least is around in this world. Weird that like everything that happens at the beginning of Mass Effect 2 has happened, and I haven't like reached out to her to be like, hey, what's up, I'm here. Like, how you doing?
There's like a weird emphasis that like despite Shepard's parents both being in the Alliance, they did not approve of him becoming an Alliance soldier. There's a weird undertone that like there is something that happened like in regards to like Shepard's father passing or something, that like the relationship between, and I think it's just overall like military parent distance. Shepard's not extremely close with his parents, despite them all kind of working for the same people in the Alliance. It's kind of like the kind of emphasis on that, because also like she's not at the celebration of him becoming the first human Spectre. Like they're his like.
I mean,
parents aren't.
To be fair, that all happens real quick. Like
that's true.
Like he's basically there for a whole other thing. And they're like, all right, let's go ahead and make him a Spectre while he's here. So.
But also like there's a lot of like there's a lot of inference that like despite all being soldiers, you like the Shepard family unit, even if it exists, is not a very tight knit one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I don't have to worry because I always play the orphan, so it's like didn't even know my parents.
Yeah, there you go. Cool. Any final thoughts on the Mass Effect Legendary Edition for you so far?
Yeah, it kicks ass. It's awesome. Everybody should play it. If you like Mass Effect, even slightly, play it. It's awesome.
Are you going through and like doing all the like the side things and like side missions and stuff? Cool. I think I've
gotten to the point where I might even get the platinum for it.
Nice.
So
I mean, yeah, like the only like really for the platinum, like the things you kind of need to do are like use all of the abilities. and also heal a lot because you have to like use Metagel 50 times basically. It's like use every ability 25 times on enemies and then use Metagel 50 times. But on that, yeah, it's a super easy platinum to get. I'm on ramp to getting the platinum in Mass Effect 2 at this point, so very
Yeah.
very cool.
I'm thinking of for my stream starting up a new shepherd for it, and then just being like, we're doing Mass Effect Mondays and doing it as like a femshep instead.
Cool.
It's like my femshep will be like my stream playthrough because I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun this last Wednesday. I streamed Mass Effect playing it,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a great time with it. I ended up streaming like an extra hour plus, and so it was like, this is great. I love it.
Nice. Very cool. Well, I think that is going to do it for this episode of That Nerdy Site Show. Thank you, Cam, for joining me. Let's go around the metaphorical table with any plugs we might have. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, I did want to give a really massive shout out to a lot of the big shout out to the 6-1 Indie guys. They're killing it over there. They just recently had a fun birthday stream for one of their members, who is a good friend of ours, Kyle, who they did Castle Crashers for his birthday, but he also was recently on an episode of PS I Love You. Want to give a shout out to that.
Mm-hmm.
He's just the absolute homie. He's a great guy. He's also a Mets fan, so I love him even more. But yeah, like check out that episode of PS I Love You. I think is just absolutely fantastic. Just keep an eye out for those guys because they are doing very well. They're working really hard, and I want to give them a big shout out because they're good people.
Cool. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I guess kind of echoing that. If all goes according to plan, Kyle and maybe Mike from 6-1 Indie, I think, are going to try and come on to that D Plus show this week. We've been talking about that for a little while, so hopefully the schedules and stuff will all align and we'll get them on, and it'll be a nice continuation of the 6-1 Indie celebration. In addition, let's see, shouting out the Let's Plays from last week, we had a couple of Cuphead Let's Plays, one of me and Logan playing together very badly, and then one of me playing solo a little bit better. Still not great, but
a lot better. Oh my gosh.
I mean, like comparatively, yes, a lot better, but still not great Cuphead play. So don't go in like expecting me to like one shot, all these enemies and stuff like that. I think I did on like one of them.
You did on the garden level. You went out without getting hit once.
Was it the garden? No, I think it was the slime ball guy.
Slime ball guy. There you go.
Yeah, I think the garden level got me a couple times because I forget the garden level. The garden. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the garden level. I was able to do without damage, but I think that was still like the second or third attempt.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah, it was a fun little Let's Play. So go check that out. Logan and I sat down today and recorded part 2 of our Overcooked, which will be debuting, I think, this week. Us playing through some Overcooked. So keep an eye out on the channel
play that with
for that as well. I'm like part 2 today. I was like, I don't know if there's going to be a part 3. So we'll see where that Let's Play series goes from here.
I do not like Overcooked. Just activates my anxiety in the worst possible ways.
Yeah, it was.
I do not like it. I do not care for it. Don't ever ask me to play it with you. It's
yeah.
not. I do not have a good time in Undercooked.
Period. Overcooked. Yeah.
Overcooked, Call me Undercooked. I will never be Overcooked.
I was feeling that a little bit today, so we'll see. We'll see what that looks like in the future. But you can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or check out thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. If you liked what you heard, once again, please rate, review, like, subscribe. Maybe even consider supporting us over on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this very show. This month's early access episode is me and Logan talking about what makes for a good James Bond movie, which we're near the end of the month, so next weekend we gotta figure out basically something to talk about for next month's early access. And yeah. Check out all that fun stuff. As always, thank you for listening. Stay nerdy and be good to each other.